In the summer of 1969, a series of brutal murders shocked America and shattered the dream of the flower power generation. Behind these horrific crimes stood a small, charismatic man with wild eyes and a twisted vision, Charles Manson. This is the story of how a lifelong criminal built a cult of devoted followers and orchestrated one of the most infamous killing sprees in American history. Charles Mills Manson was born on November 12, 1934, in Cincinnati, Ohio, to 16-year-old Kathleen Maddox. His mother was an alcoholic and occasionally worked as a prostitute, leaving young Charles without stable parenting. His biological father remains uncertain, though his birth certificate listed Colonel Walker Henderson Scott as the father. Kathleen later married William Manson, whose surname Charles took, though this relationship was short-lived. Manson's childhood was marked by neglect and instability. His mother was frequently absent, leaving him with relatives, or at times, complete strangers. In one infamous story, she allegedly sold him for a pitcher of beer to a childless waitress, though his uncle later retrieved him. By age 9, Manson was already showing signs of delinquency, and his mother had him placed in the Jabot School for Boys in Indiana, a reform school for troubled youth. This pattern would define Manson's early years, a cycle of petty crimes, reform schools, and juvenile detention centers. He escaped repeatedly, committed burglaries, and stole cars. By 13, he had committed his first armed robbery. The institutions where he spent his formative years taught him survival skills, manipulation tactics, and deepened his resentment toward society and authority. By the time Manson reached adulthood, he had spent more of his life incarcerated than free. Prison became his true home, his education, and his university. It was in prison that he learned to play guitar, studied Dale Carnegie's techniques for influencing people, absorbed aspects of Scientology, and developed the charismatic manipulation skills he would later use to devastating effect. In 1967, at age 32, Manson was released from federal prison in California. He had reportedly asked to stay inside, fearing he couldn't adjust to the outside world. But the authorities released him anyway into the Summer of Love, a time when San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district overflowed with young people seeking alternative lifestyles, spiritual awakening, and freedom from conventional society. Manson arrived at the perfect moment to exploit the counterculture. With his guitar, his prison-honed charisma, and his apparent spiritual wisdom, he began attracting followers, primarily young women who were searching for meaning, community, and a father figure. These women, many from middle-class backgrounds, were drawn to his intense attention and his promises of unconditional love and acceptance. The first to join him was Mary Brunner, a 23-year-old library assistant from University of Wisconsin who met Manson in Berkeley. She became completely devoted to him. Soon, others followed. Lynette Squeaky Frome, Susan Atkins, Patricia Katie Krenwinkel, and Leslie Van Houten among them. Manson also attracted some male followers, including Charles Tex Watson, who would become his most violent lieutenant. Manson established what he called the family at Spahn Ranch, a dilapidated movie ranch in the Santa Susana Mountains, northwest of Los Angeles. The property's elderly owner, George Spahn, allowed the group to stay there in exchange for work maintaining the property, and the sexual favors Squeaky Frome provided him. Life at Spahn Ranch revolved entirely around Manson. He established himself as a messianic figure, combining elements of Christianity, Scientology, and his own twisted philosophy. He preached about an impending apocalyptic race war he called Helter Skelter, a term he borrowed from the Beatles' White Album, which he believed contained coded messages directed at him personally. Manson's ideology was a paranoid, racist nightmare masquerading as spiritual prophecy. He taught his followers that a race war was imminent, that African Americans would rise up and slaughter the white population, but would ultimately lack the intelligence to govern themselves. The family, according to Manson's vision, would survive this apocalypse by hiding in a bottomless pit in Death Valley. Afterward, they would emerge to rule over the Black victors, with Manson as the supreme leader. To prepare for this scenario, Manson began talking about the need to ignite helter-skelter, to start the race war himself. He believed that by committing murders that would be blamed on Black militants, he could trigger the conflict. This delusional, racist fantasy became the ideological foundation for the murders that would follow. Manson maintains absolute control over his followers through a combination of techniques: sleep deprivation, drug use, particularly LSD, sexual manipulation, isolation from family and former friends, and alternating between love bombing and psychological abuse. He broke down his followers' individual identities and rebuilt them in his image. Many family members later described feeling as though Manson could read their thoughts, that he possessed supernatural powers, and that disobeying him was literally unthinkable. By the summer of 1969, Manson had been preparing his followers for violence. The turning point came when his musical ambitions were definitively crushed. Manson had befriended Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, and through him had connected with record producer Terry Melcher. When Melcher declined to give Manson a recording contract, Manson's rage intensified. Terry Melcher had previously lived at 10,050 Cielo Drive in Benedict Canyon, a fact that would have deadly consequences. On the night of August 8, 1969, Manson dispatched 4 family members, Charles Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian, to that address with explicit instructions to commit murder. Manson's exact words to Watson were reported as, "Go to that house where Melcher used to live and totally destroy everyone in it, as gruesome as you can." Tex Watson led the group over the gate at 1050 Cielo Drive, where they first encountered 18-year-old Stephen Parent, who was leaving after visiting the property's caretaker. Watson shot him 4 times, killing him in his car. The group then entered the house, where they found 5 people: actress Sharon Tate, who was 8.5 months pregnant, celebrity hairstylist Jay Sebring, coffee heiress Abigail Folger, her boyfriend Wojciech Frykowski, and Sharon Tate's husband, director Roman Polanski, was out of the country working. What followed was savage and merciless. Watson shot Sebring when he tried to protect Sharon Tate. Frykowski and Folger attempted to escape, but were chased down and brutally stabbed multiple times. Sharon Tate begged for her life and the life of her unborn child, but Susan Atkins showed no mercy, stabbing her 16 times. Before leaving, Atkins wrote "pig" on the front door in Sharon Tate's blood. The next night, August 9, 1969, Manson decided to accompany his followers to show them how to do it. This time, the targets were Lino and Rosemary LaBianca, a wealthy couple who lived in the Los Feliz neighborhood. Manson entered their home first, tied them up, and then left Watson, Krenwinkel, and Van Houten to kill them. The LaBiancas were stabbed multiple times. The killers carved "war" into Lino's abdomen and left a fork protruding from his stomach. They wrote "Death to Pigs" and "Hilter Skelter," misspelled, and blood on the walls, and "Rise" on the refrigerator door. Understanding Charles Manson's motivations requires looking at the intersection of his personal pathology, his ideology, and the specific circumstances of 1969. Several factors converged to create the conditions for these murders. First, Manson was a malignant narcissist with psychopathic traits who had spent most of his life in institutions. He lacked empathy, felt entitled to power, and viewed other people as objects to be used for his purposes. His need for control was absolute, and violence was simply another tool in his arsenal. Second, his failed musical career represented a profound narcissistic injury. Manson genuinely believed he deserved fame and recognition. When the establishment rejected him, particularly through Terry Melcher's rejection, it confirmed his worldview that society was corrupt and needed to be destroyed. The Tate murders occurred at the former Melcher residence, suggesting revenge was a motivating factor, even though Manson knew Melcher no longer lived there. Third, Manson needed to maintain his control over the family. By this point, some members were beginning to question his teachings, particularly when Helter Skelter didn't spontaneously begin. By directing his followers to commit murder, Manson bound them to him through the ultimate act of loyalty. They would be murderers together, forever separated from conventional society and completely dependent on him. Fourth, Manson's racist ideology provided a framework that justified violence. By believing he was triggering an inevitable historical process, the race war he thought was coming anyway, he could rationalize the murders as historically necessary rather than simply evil. Finally, Manson was a sadist who enjoyed wielding power over life and death. He derived satisfaction from knowing he could order others to kill and they would obey. Notably, Manson himself rarely committed violence directly. He preferred to manipulate others into doing his killing for him, which allowed him to maintain psychological distance while still exercising ultimate control. Initially, law enforcement struggled to connect the Tate and LaBianca murders. The brutality and seemingly random nature of the crimes baffled investigators. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Susan Atkins, who was arrested on an unrelated charge, began boasting about the murders to her cellmates. One cellmate, Virginia Graham, was horrified by Atkins' detailed descriptions of the killings and reported what she had heard to authorities. Atkins described stabbing Sharon Tate, tasting her blood, and feeling no remorse. She revealed that the murders were ordered by someone she called Charlie and that they were intended to start a race war. This information allowed investigators to make the connections they had been missing. In raids on Spahn Ranch and other family locations, police arrested multiple family members. The investigation revealed the full scope of Manson's control over his followers and the ideology that motivated the murders. On December 1, 1969, the Los Angeles Police Department announced they had solved the Tate-LaBianca murders. Manson and 4 family members, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, Leslie Van Houten, and Charles Watson, were charged with 7 counts of first-degree murder. The trial began in June 1970 and became a media circus. Manson and his co-defendants engaged in bizarre courtroom behavior designed to disrupt proceedings. They carved X's into their foreheads, which Manson later turned into a swastika. They sang, they made threats, and Manson once lunged at the judge with a sharpened pencil. Linda Kasabian, who had been present at both murder scenes but didn't participate in the killings, became the prosecution's star witness in exchange for immunity. Her testimony provided the detailed eyewitness account that connected Manson to the murders, even though he hadn't personally wielded the weapons. Prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi built his case around proving that Manson had ordered the murders and maintained such control over his followers that they acted as extensions of his will. The helter-skelter motive, while bizarre, helped jurors understand why these seemingly senseless murders had occurred. Outside the courthouse, remaining family members maintained a vigil, demonstrating their continued devotion to Manson. Squeaky Fromm and other followers carved X's in their foreheads to match Manson's, held up newspapers with provocative headlines, and granted interviews declaring Manson's innocence. On January 25, 1971, Manson and his 3 female co-defendants were found guilty of first-degree murder. Charles Watson was tried separately and also convicted. On March 29, 1971, all were sentenced to death. However, when California temporarily abolished capital punishment in 1972, their sentences were commuted to life in prison. Charles Manson became one of America's most infamous criminals, a symbol of the dark side of the 1960s counterculture. The murders effectively ended the era of innocence associated with the hippie movement. The image of flower children transformed into that of potential danger, and paranoia replaced the previous spirit of openness and trust. Manson remained in prison for the rest of his life, continuously denied parole in 12 hearings. He gave numerous interviews over the decades, sometimes rambling incoherently, other times displaying the manipulative charisma that had attracted his followers. He never showed genuine remorse for the murders and often denied direct responsibility while simultaneously taking credit for his influence. He died on November 19, 2017, at age 83 from cardiac arrest and respiratory failure, still imprisoned at California's State Prison in Corcoran. To the end, he received more mail than almost any other prisoner in California, demonstrating the continued fascination with one of history's most notorious cult leaders. The story of Charles Manson remains a cautionary tale about the dangers of charismatic manipulation, the vulnerability of those seeking meaning and belonging, and the capacity for evil that can emerge when a damaged individual gains power over others. The murders he orchestrated destroyed multiple families, ended the lives of 7 innocent people, and permanently scarred American culture. Manson represents the darkest possibilities of human nature, the willingness to manipulate, control, and destroy others to satisfy twisted delusions of grandeur and power.